Okay, let's see if this is connecting. Yeah, there we go. Sweet. Hey, hey. Got some people popping in already. So I'm thinking, I was thinking of doing a impromptu live stream sometime. I live stream quite often on my Patreon, actually every week, but I thought of maybe doing a live stream just as I'm working on stuff. Could be kind of fun. Also to see just a different part of my audience that I interact with a little less often. So yeah, we're doing that today. Hey, hey. So I'm just gonna be I'm gonna be sketching just another kind of sketchbook page. You know, this might turn into a character design eventually. I'm just kind of warming up. It's still pretty early in the morning. Just gonna be sketching some stuff from imagination. Hey, hey, first time able to catch Christoph live. Hello. Yeah, a bit of a impromptu live stream this morning. I've been thinking about doing this for a while, so yeah, and I'm excited about this the prospect of meeting or, you know, interacting with more of my YouTube folks. So I'll try to keep an eye on the chat. Holy smokes, we've got 60 people already. So the more people are in the chat, obviously I'm going to be looking at my canvas mostly, but I'll take a look every once in a while. Try to catch up on what's going on. Hey, hey, hello everyone. I think I'll bring this like forward. Do typical walking character here. Hey, hey, from Montreal. Yes, sir. Yeah, I think maybe I'll do just kind of a typical walking pose for this character. Hey. So yeah, I'm just warming up. I'm for the stream. I'm just gonna be kind of sketching as I usually do in the morning. Sketching in my sketchbook, my digital sketchbook, per se. Working on a character design. often I find I can kind of relax in the morning and just work out some ideas that have been floating in my head. Sometimes it gives, sometimes it turns out to be something cool. Sometimes it's just, you know, working through the motions of practice. So yeah, who knows where this is gonna go. Start out with just some figures here. Might dress up, you know, do a little bit of costume design. Wonder how your exploration of canvas texture versus brush texture concluded. Oh, it's never concluded. I'm still flip-flopping between, like right now the texture is built into the brush. I've been trying this brush here that as I scale up, the texture scales up, where you can get some really nice nuance of texture and also color. Like if I zoom in here, I can kind of use the spray effect of the texture to mix colors, even though they might be wildly different. So here you get like kind of a pointillism effect, right? So you can mix all sorts of colors and you get all this nice sort of noise happening, which I find is kind of cool. So that's the latest on the texture. There's I can achieve some cool effects when rendering with that, especially with skin and stuff where there's a lot of color variation. But yeah, I'm also using Clip Studio instead of Photoshop. I know I've been using Photoshop for years, but I'm trying out Clip Studio. So far it's been great, so I'm thinking of switching over more or less permanently. so I hope that'll okay, what kind of character is this gonna be? I don't know. This is I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. Let's give her a face. Maybe looking down. Sad character. Pensive. She's thinking about something. What anatomy books would I recommend? I am a big fan of Bridgman. Keep a little copy of this bad boy, Constructive Anatomy. Keep this always close by. I've also printed out a few pages of it and have them as like posters in my office. You can actually see one here, right above me. So I think that's the portrait one. So I printed out all the portrait sketches or facial features if I ever need to refer to them. And in front of me I have the three other big posters with I have it broken down into like torso and legs, limbs, and then appendages like feet and hands. so I can kind of refer to them. Yeah, big fan of Bridgman. I also like Godfrey Bams. Actually have all my books basically right beside me. So this one, Anatomy for Artists and Illustrators, Godfrey Bams, is a big brick. You can see I have a lot of little bookmarks in there for different parts. This is more of an academic figure drawing book, and then another book that I really suggest for anybody learning anatomy is something like this, an atlas for anatomy. This is just a medical anatomy book. I think I got it from the McGill University Library, but yeah, that's what med students use, or like anybody studying anatomy for medical purposes, right? Physiotherapy, etc. So yeah, having that as a reference to kind of like cross-examine stuff, or compare, like because often things like Bridgman or Loomis, right, they're slightly stylized, which can be cool, but sometimes you just want the raw information. If anybody has an idea of what I should do with this character, let me know in the chat, or else I'm probably just gonna end up drawing something really like generic. Designing takes brain power, and when I'm talking and drawing, I just go on autopilot. So excited to see this biscuit. Oh, thank you very much. Hey. Yeah, so figured I'd do a little impromptu live stream. Welcome everyone who's just popping in right now. Happy to see you guys dropping by. And it's kind of an awkward time in the morning. You know, people are probably going into work soon, but this is kind of the time of day where I'm warming up, and I'm kind of just getting the day rolling. You do like a scavenger type character. She's got like a braided hairstyle or something. I'm figuring out all the costume design on another layer before committing to anything. I have no idea what I'm going for, by the way. This is just, you know, all impromptu. can give her maybe like a exoskeleton suit, something. Feel like you're ever chopped in your art style? Yes and no. I'm always trying to learn new stuff. Like take in different philosophies of different artists that I like. Often I try to pull just like a few elements from different art styles that I like. I mean, obviously I've worked on developing my own art style, but that art style does, you know, it slowly morphs over time. So the goal is to try to stay kind of like flexible. But yeah, sometimes I feel like I can get a little bit trapped by my muscle memory, basically. Like shapes that I use will kind of come back often. And if I want to create something that's like not generic, or something that I feel that's really original, I need to make a conscious effort to get away from that, and to kind of challenge my my tendencies. So this would be the opposite of that. I'm not really challenging anything. I'm just kind of going through the motions, warming up. It can be pretty. It can be hard, like mentally, to you know, try stuff outside your comfort zone. So I always try to warm up a little bit, and you know, get a couple easy wins before starting to explore some unexplored territory. The uncharted territory of stylization, different archetypes. So like this, I don't find this character particularly interesting, but it's okay because I have a basic mannequin and I can just try different ideas. Hope nobody gets too attached to one design, because I'll go through dozens potentially before finding something that I deem worthy. Is this live going to be archived? For sure. Yep. All my live streams will be archived. It's just free content. I know what I'm doing with this hairstyle. I'm just feeling like drawing some sci-fi this morning. Again, I have no idea what I'm planning on designing. I kind of need to work through some different sketch ideas and find a shape language that can become appealing. And it just takes time sometimes. Like a RoboCop sort of thing, maybe. AI can't mimic this pure skill. I wish that was true, but I'm just I work from sketch to sketch. If I feel like I'm getting stuck on something, I'll just switch gears, try something else. Sometimes I just need to work out an idea, like from a different pose or something. maybe get a little bit of a, you know, different angle of stuff. Basically tackle the same problem from different angles. It's kind of giving a little bit of a Ghost in the Shell vibe. I want her to kind of be like kneeling. She's got something on her back. Trying to think of like some storytelling I can bring, and you can see like the more I start to work stuff out, like I kind of play a story in my head, and it helps me figure out details for the character, and then it's just a matter of like working it out on the page. So I want her to kind of be like reaching for something like behind her back. It's a bit of a weird twist in the arm. Maybe a little bit too awkward. I think maybe we can like I want her to be sort of like looking into the camera as if she's stalking a scene far away, like looking past the camera. Infiltrating a facility or something. Maybe she's on a rooftop. Exaggerate maybe the foreshortening. Maybe bring all this down. Got some big, like a big cannon weapon or something. This is more like a wing. Oh, it's kind of Blastoise. Okay, no Blastoise. Okay, let me catch up on the chat here. Oh, nice. Got a lot of people here all of a sudden. Okay, let me just read back here. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for popping by. I really appreciate it. Which part of the process is your favorite? Definitely. So I really like this problem solving part of a design stage, but once I have the design figured out, then I really like the initial shading part because I feel like it brings the character to life really quickly. So I like kind of the form modeling, kind of sculpting aspect of shading. So I find that really rewarding. And then the like very last stage of coloring where I'm adding all the little final touches, I find really fun too. What brush tool in the brush parks of yours are good? Oh, brush packs. Good for sketching or forming silhouettes. So I'd say anything. I like to sketch with brushes that have opacity. So if you set any brush, like, you know, a brush like this one, right? Is fully opaque, so stuff that lays down paint fast, I find is good for blocking in silhouettes. So maybe, you know, stuff like this, you kind of need to go through them and see how your pressure sensitivity reacts to it. So brushes that lay down paint quickly are good for silhouettes. Brushes that have a lot of opacity to them, right? I like sketching with. So it can be really any brush, because if you make it small enough, you'll get a line. Example, like, you know, this one has a little more opacity, but if I make it small, it can be fun to sketch with. So I'd say just experiment. You can always adjust the flow in the brush settings and just make it work for you. Desire direct color. That's kind of a hard one. When I'm designing stuff, I find it easier to work in Grisaille or like do a value painting first, right, and then go into color afterward. Because I'm doing stuff from imagination, I find it easier to resolve a design in black and white, or else you have like too much to think about if you're working directly in color. But if you have some good material references and you have a good idea of what you're shooting for in terms of color, I like working directly in color, for sure. You can get a lot more nuance and you know, the color that you're putting on the page. It's like a direct thing, so I like that. Okay, let's see. Be crazy if Chris live streamed on Twitch too. Yeah, I mean, it's another platform. Most of my audience is here on YouTube, so I'll stick with YouTube for now. So at this stage, I'm pretty confident, like, I could start shading and basically resolve the design in the shading part. Like, I have some silhouette information, kind of know what I'm going for. Now there's going to be a big cannon here. So yeah, let's jump into shading. And I'm just going to jump in to the kind of head area, resolve that, and then work my way away from that. And in terms of lighting, let's see. I think I'll just do kind of a simple like light source from the top center, more or less. It'll give me some nice exposure to the face. I just don't want it to be like half in light, half in shadow. I want there to be some like a little bit of like a nice ratio, maybe like 2/3 in light, 1/3 in shadow, or 3/4 in light, 1/4 in shadow. So I'm gonna use the far side is gonna be in shadow, and then on the light side, I'm gonna keep things really light, not need to work things out too much. We have some cast shadow of the hair. And I'm really just going to focus on creating some interesting shadow shapes. And get those overlaps working. For shinier objects, I'll go a little bit darker first, and then pull out the highlights. I could do this like with the eraser or with a brush. Like I could just paint it in, but here, let's say this is going to be in shadow. I'm gonna have a cast shadow on the collar here, and I'm gonna work out all the parts of the light simultaneously. So there's multiple components of light, right? You'll have like diffuse light, specular light, like specular highlight, have ambient occlusion, form shadows, cast shadows, subsurface scattering, reflected light, like all a lot of different properties of light. And I'm kind of trying to visualize and paint at the same time. So trying to resolve a lot of that at the same time. And I can do stuff like, so let's say I have a cylinder here, right? If I go to shade this cylinder, I can, if I tell myself, okay, I have a light source coming from here and a rim light coming from here, then I don't need to start my shading from the edge. I can start it kind of from inside, which gives me a rim light automatically, right? And then I can kind of shade this way. So I get like kind of both light sources plotted in. I don't think I'm gonna use a rim light, maybe. You can always introduce a rim light by erasing, but actually I might. Yeah, I'll introduce a rim light here. zoom out just to make sure that my forms are reading okay. And this is what I mean by like I can resolve the stuff in the shading stage, is I can focus on the shape design of light and shadow and kind of resolve things at the same time. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable. Also thinking about like anatomy. Right, we have like the abdominal wall. We're gonna have some overlaps of the armor. And this side's gonna go into shadow. This whole side is probably gonna be in shadow. Cast shadow from the legs. Clip Studio Paint's brush engine is really nice. I wouldn't say it's like superior to Photoshop's. Like Photoshop's is really strong. They have different perks. Some stuff I've found a little bit less intuitive than Photoshop's brush engine, but you know, they're both great. I'm just kind of glimpsing up at the chat to try to catch people's questions. You have custom short keys to increase and decrease the brush so quickly. Yeah, you might be able to hear it if I slam my keys, but I'm basically using a comma and period on the keyboard to switch my brush size. Normally it's the bracket keys or square bracket keys, but I'm just using those ones instead. Actually, I'm just going to use actual values. I'm going to paint with values instead of switching between the brush and eraser. Be able to kind of control stuff a little bit more and get more of a polished black and white image a little earlier. Kind of just figuring out what the design of these parts are going to look like. A lot of these shapes are really abstract still, but that's okay. I like kind of finding shapes in the clouds, and I get some interesting designs out of that. And then I can symmetrize it, which makes it look intentional. And then once I do find a shape that I like, or a silhouette that I like, I can kind of refine the silhouette. Like let's say I brush in, I can do a lot of like form modeling and just be really loose with it. And I might see some interesting stuff like in the forms that I'm creating in like an abstract way. And then once I have I get like more confident, I can do kind of a line around the silhouette. I'm not saying this is going to work because it's a really quick demo, but let's say I want to cut my silhouette off there. I can make like a quick line, and then I'll just clean up the silhouette with the eraser. And that kind of cleans up the drawing. Maybe I can go in with like a rim light or a specular highlight or something, and kind of like clean up those forms that way. But, you know, designs, for me at least, designs often start out really abstract and kind of a little bit ambiguous, and then over time, like working them out, I can find the different details and resolve the design. Pretty sure you're working on, or first time working with a brush that changes the size of the texture with size of the brush. Yeah, so I'm really enjoying this kind of brush. So as like the brush gets bigger, the texture gets bigger. I explained it earlier in the video, but or earlier in the stream, but it gives me like a really nice kind of pointillism effect, especially once I start using color. And for all intents and purposes, like it's very similar to just using a soft brush at this scale. And when I'm working in black and white, there's almost no difference. It just kind of gives me a little bit more variation in the brush size. And okay, I'm gonna work a tiny bit more on the face. It's always like an interesting part to watch. I can kind of use value to indicate color. Like if I darken the nose, it'll look a little bit more red. And then I just want to make sure that I'm hitting the proper values for the different planes of the face. Give her some eyelids and actually make her look like she's looking at something. Give a little bit of detail to the hair. Even though Some people think my art style is like really realistic, but I find it's a lot about the abstraction, or the like indicating detail but not necessarily drawing it all. So it's kind of all an illusion of detail. I mean, it's intentional, but it's not like I'm not trying to draw like every strand of hair or every eyelash, and stuff is like still quite blurry, but when you look at it from far, it feels like there's texture and stuff. So and knock this back into shadow a little bit more. Like the cast shadow of the hair. Then I can add like some costume elements. Artists leaving Adobe these days. Yeah, it's just the reality of things. When you use a hard brush in your painting, almost never. If I use a hard brush, it's probably to fill. So I might use something like this to do like a mask, for example, right? So I mask my stuff out with a hard brush often because it gives me like a nice silhouette, right? So I might use a hard brush for that. And any kind of like, I also call this a hard brush, right? Even though it's got a bit of a softer edge than the other one I just used. But you know, if I want a more anti-aliased mask, something with a little bit more texture. But besides that, I can get a hard edge with a soft brush. So I don't need to worry too much about hard edges. If I make my brush small enough, right, I can just start small and then move away from that edge and get a hard edge on one side and a soft edge on the other. So there's no real reason for me to use a hard brush. I really don't like this form that I made. Also use a hard eraser to erase stuff. Sample this video, don't see quite. Subtitle option for Christoph's speech. Or what a shame. I'm not sure if... I'd have to check. Maybe that's something in the stream settings. I'd have to check that out. But if I can figure that out for next time, I'll try to figure out the live subtitles. I'm going to zoom out a tad and try to evaluate this illustration from further out. Surprising how much you can get done when you're just zooming out and, you know, looking at the whole thing, instead of like looking at details. You can make big changes and stuff. I really like this shoulder pad. This is not going my way whatsoever. That's what happens when you kind of rush into stuff. Okay, let's see. Erase this. I mean, I'm still quote unquote warming up, so stuff like this is bound to happen. We're just having fun here. Okay. Wouldn't the PS file size also rely on the not just the canvas size? Yeah, the Photoshop size definitely. I mean, every time you add a new layer, right, it kind of doubles the raw file size, or the canvas size, right? It needs to store that pixel information. What sort of design rules are you following when you make the costume? Flow, golden ratio. Right now, I'm just following my instinct. I'm just doing this kind of mindlessly, which is why it's not a great design. Okay, using CS6 is the best Photoshop for making art, mostly nowadays. CS6 was stable. Photoshop now just kind of drills you with a bunch of AI tools and crashes like every 2 days, deletes your cache files and resets all your settings. so that's why I've been using Clip Studio Paint. So glad you're making live streams. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for dropping by, everyone. How do you practice working on visual library when it comes to design? To work on your visual library, I'd just draw tons of stuff from reference. Whether that be like figure drawings to be able to draw better figures from imagination, industrial design if you're working on that sort of thing. Vehicles, whatever you want to add to your vehicle library, just draw a ton from reference and you'll improve. Okay, what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna start a new thing. I'm gonna draw standing character. So yeah, I'm gonna be jumping around. Sorry if anybody's attached to what I'm drawing. This is the process. It's not always pretty. And it's not always linear. We're gonna do a low angle. Something about dual wielding weapons that I find really cool. You'll see a lot of my characters often have 2 weapons. It's not really practical because if you have 2 weapons, like how do you reload one of them? You kind of need to like put one away and use both hands momentarily. But there's just something super sick about dual wielding weapons. really want to kind of like exaggerate the foreshortening in this, or the kind of perspective angle. Gesture and all that stuff really kind of push things out. If anybody wants to see me draw something, like or a certain subject, let me know, and I feel like I need some inspiration. Hello, are you using any photos reference images? No, I am not. All of this has been drawn from imagination so far. Man or woman, who do you draw most? Look at my portfolio. I like 90% women. I do a lot of studies of both. Like, it's really important to understand all kinds of anatomy, but that's I prefer female characters. Cyberpunk warlock, love it. Forget what is the what does a warlock do again? Isn't a warlock like someone who brings the dead back? That's a necromancer. Okay, wait, let me look up what a warlock is real fast. I suck at this sort of stuff. Male practitioner of witchcraft. Okay, yeah, it's like a it's a male witch. Yeah. Okay, well, sorry, I'm not John Dudes. Do a cyberpunk witch though. Cyberpunk witch. How am I going to do this? Okay, so when mixing archetypes like this, first you got to think what makes a witch a witch, and then you got to think what makes cyberpunk cyberpunk. So we're definitely gonna go with like maybe not a pointy hat, but definitely something maybe a little bit flowier. Maybe I can play with some like techwear stuff. Some cybernetic components. Maybe she's got like a robot arm that gives her powers. big fan of robotic limbs. Robotic limbs that were some witch boots. What would cybernetic witch boots look like? Some long flowy stuff. Maybe we've got some electrical tubes and gadgets and stuff. Give her a little smirk. Find where the jaw is going to be. And then how I want the hair to flow. Just down. Haven't figured out that part yet. Definitely want some overlap in the shoulder. Kind of push that head back. like a robot arm. Okay. Let me catch on my chat. You even forgot. Can you drop in your Blue Sky link? Yeah, all my socials are Christoph Young. Just like all attached. Yeah, so actually, yeah, so you guys can see in the banner, now there's quite a few people here, I can mention a couple things. So, yeah, right now I'm kind of trying out some different social medias, since like social media platforms have been kind of wreaking havoc on people's privacy and intellectual property and all this stuff, and changing ownerships, all this stuff. I've just been trying different stuff. So I tried out some Kara, right? I gave ArtStation a break for a while. Instagram, I nuked my Instagram, so I'm not on there anymore. YouTube, obviously, I'm still doing stuff here. And yeah, I just made myself a Blue Sky account today. So if anybody's on Blue Sky, go check it out. All my socials are just Christoph Young attached, so you can find me over there. And besides that, I'm still doing my Patreon and all that stuff, and that's going well. And if anyone's interested in learning concept art, I just opened my winter session for my concept art masterclass and mentorship. So you can see that in the middle of the banner there. If you're interested, you can just go over to christophyoung.com and read up about it. The course summary and the syllabus is all there. I've also attached, there's a frequently asked questions if you want to know more about it. I'm also going to be attaching a student gallery soon, so you guys can see what the students are actually doing in class. I think that was a big thing that was mentioned in the in my previous video when I first launched this fall semester, which is going great, by the way. So yeah, for those interested, you can go check that out. And yeah, I've never been great with navigating the crazy world of social media and the internet. I find it really stressful in a lot of ways, because there's like people on the internet are kind of ruthless. Like they don't hold back the way they probably would in reality when there's social pressures to behave. So yeah, it's been a good sort of like process to be a little more active on social media and do what I can. So but I think if I just by live streaming this way, I think it already adds a lot. So yeah, managing social media is a different kind of anxiety. Yeah, it can also be kind of a full-time job. I don't have like a social media manager or anything like that. So okay, is Blue Sky good? I haven't heard of it. It's basically Twitter Um, I was never on Twitter. I just know that it's like, it's known to be like the most toxic community on the internet, especially when it comes to politics and stuff like that. But I've been recommended it by a couple artist friends of mine. And I'm really careful now with the way I use social media to make sure that I'm just in it to follow artists and follow the art community and interact with well-behaved people, or else it can really be a drag. So yeah, but so far, clean interface. It seems stable. It seems like it's run by good people or competent people. Yeah, I'll try it out for a bit. Also, I don't know how long I'll be streaming. I mean, once once I'm just tired and hungry, I'll probably give it a break, but that won't be for a while still. Instagram bad now. I don't know if Instagram's good or bad now. I've left a few months ago, so good evening from Japan. Hey. Yeah, let me know where you guys are from. I'm interested to know. Streaming in the morning like this, I'm expecting more of a more of like a European audience. People in the States, like on the west coast of the Americas, are probably just waking up right now. So yeah, nice. Well, hello from all over the world. Nice, nice. Hello from everywhere. That's super cool. Super cool. So I'm gonna go kind of going straight into color. With this, it's gonna be a little bit messy at the beginning as I just put down colors, but like I said, I often work kind of finding shapes in the clouds. And you can kind of see the strength of using a tool like this when it comes to actually building texture and stuff. You can get some really cool nuance by layering like different colors sculpting different forms. I think this is going to be more of like a black cloak. And then I'll cut into it in different ways to add folds and stuff and develop the form. You can also add little, like some trim. Black and gold always work great together. And when I'm introducing colors, I try to think about color temperature and varying color temperatures with different, parts of the atmosphere. So as I mentioned earlier, when you're shading, you're thinking about all aspects of light, and if you're coloring directly like this, then you also need to think about all aspects of light plus, the local value, local color, atmospheric perspective, or atmospheric lighting, or ambient lighting I should say, and juggle all those things. So it's a little more challenging, but it comes with practice. I'm starting with the jacket because it's going to give me kind of the darkest value that I want to hit on this character. Here I'm going for kind of a really glossy metal. So I'm going to go for like a dark horizon and a bit of a warmer ground. Like that's being reflected in the cylinder of the arm. And then I'll go for like cooler tones on top to get that kind of sky blue effect. Dark reflections in. And admittedly, this is going to kind of look like crap until I sharpen up edges and really define stuff. But you kind of got to bear with me. I trust my process. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to trust, but I trust it nonetheless. It's always given me good results. And the more I build up, like the more nuance I can get, and the more interesting stuff starts to become, right? Right, like once I start adding some hard edges in here, stuff really starts to come to life. So let's put in some cut lines. I want it to be kind of like a chrome finish. We're gonna get really harsh dark shadows when you're working with chrome. As the light kind of like internally reflects, it'll basically lose all its energy. And then in the interstitial space, I'll add in some like darker details and stuff. So that's a kind of overview of the process. You can kind of see how we go from sloppy sketch to sloppy coloring to something refined. In the face, I like to just lay in some really soft variances in color first. If I'm doing a face directly in color, you can see that kind of creates some color zones of the face. So we have like redder nose, redder cheeks, redder lips, redder eyes. I like to basically make all the features a little bit redder, like there's more blood flowing through them. And then for parts like the chin and forehead, I kind of desaturate them a little bit, or shift the hue a little bit. On the forehead, I'll tend to make it a little more blue, a little cooler, as if it's getting some reflected light from above. And then for the chin, I'll go a little bit more yellow because it's getting reflected light from below. And adding a little bit of redness around like the borders, inside the crevices, and at the kind of terminator of the shadow will kind of give the effect of subsurface scattering, which can be, you know, it makes the skin look like skin basically. Know what kind of cyberpunk look I'm gonna go for. Maybe we can do some glowy eyes. Start figuring out or sharpening up some shadow shapes for the rest of the face. By like shifting over shadow shapes, you can really change the volume of the face by kind of just shifting the edge. And I think I'll go with like a jet black hair. So we'll kind of get the same, get some like blue reflected light. Don't mind kind of not ruining the edge, but overlapping a little bit of the edge of the cybernetics and stuff, because I need to find that afterward. I need to bring this forward if I want it to cover the ear. So you can see I get this kind of like pointillism effect in the face where I can use lots of different colors, right? And it'll just kind of blend in, get like a lot of different hue shifts and stuff, especially if I go really saturated. It's noticeable when you zoom in, right? So it might look soft from here, but as you zoom in, you get all this kind of like interplay of different colors. Which I really like. I think it's a nice little detail. We can add in some nostrils. Add in a little specular highlight on the ball of the nose. That should make it pop out a bit. Corner of the eyes. Adjust the bridge of the nose. Cyberpunk. Let's give her some crazy colorful makeup. She's also a witch, so give her some witch makeup. Going with a bit of like a purple yellow complementary. and that sort of underlying redness kind of adds a nice little bit of subsurface scattering. Like it's all about that like temperature variation and nuance. I can give her some shimmery lips. Maybe some shimmery eye makeup. And we're just kind of working the hairline a bit. Maybe I go a little bit purple with this too. Then I'll catch up. Catch up on what y'all are saying. Okay. Okay. Where do I start? There's so many people. It's great to see you all here. Hope you guys are enjoying the process and the chat. And okay, let me work from the latest to the backward a bit. You think it's actually better to paint with such heavy texture brush given how you have to work small to make it solid? So it really depends. It's up to you. I know that for me the process of working with this texture brush is really about layering and kind of like, I mean, I worked years and years with just a soft brush, right? And I've tried a soft brush with a little bit of texture, soft brush with a lot of texture, and the process, they can all lead to the same end, right? It's just a means to an end. So if you know what you're going for, you can use almost any tool and get there somehow. It just depends what, along the way, different tools and different processes will, they'll inform your illustration in a different way. So I like the nuance that I can get out of this when, painting directly in color, especially. Sketching is super similar to like the other ways I used to sketch before with more of a soft brush. Yeah, it's if you're heavy-handed with any tool, it's not going to look great, right? You want to be subtle in the way that you and have a lot of control with every tool that you use. So it's kind of like it can be hard to be subtle with a hammer, but if you're good with a hammer, you can still make it work. Okay, do you think it's actually better to paint with... Okay, wait, that I just answered. Do you think it's... Okay, you just repeated the question. Okay, let me go back up here. What advice, anecdotes, or recommendations would you give when it comes to salary and day rates? Salary and day rates. So the industry... So for concept art, I would always suggest charging a day rate. Or an hourly rate, and not a flat sum, especially if you're doing contract work. It can be a little bit difficult to calculate that amount, but let's say you're okay. So first of all, if you're comparing your day rate as a contract worker to a salary, you'd probably charge double the amount of your hourly salary. That's kind of standard when you're outsourcing. Or when studios are outsourcing to contract artists, they tend to pay more, but you're holding a much shorter contract. You don't have as stable of a position. Um, so some artists, I would start with double, and then as you're more well known, you can charge more and more. If you don't know what that rate is, that rate really depends on the artist. I hate to give like a roundabout answer like this, but it really does just depend on like what you think you're worth and what other clients think you're worth, right? If you charge $100 an hour and you're not getting any work, then obviously your clients don't think you're worth $100 an hour. So it can be difficult to flirt with that line to see like if you think you're worth a certain amount per hour. You obviously want to try to charge that, but also if your client is a studio, video game studio, or like a AAA studio, they're obviously going to pay better than if your client is an old lady on Instagram who just wants like a portrait of their daughter or something. Those are wonderful people. They're not worse clients, and often they can treat you in a more humane way. But obviously their budgets aren't the same as a AAA studio, so you kind of need to balance things. Say charge for your hourly rate, charge at least minimum, if not double minimum wage. As you get better, you can hike your rate up. It's just a supply and demand thing. So I know some artists that might charge $50 an hour for the contract work, and I know some artists that charge $200 an hour for the contract work. It's just however in demand they are. In terms of salary, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you're going in as a junior, just look at what the junior salaries are in your area and for the studios that you have. Make sure that the studio that you're working at is being competitive and not slacken on their salaries, unless you really, really, really need a job, and then take what you can find. But like in Montreal, in my area, concept artists generally make, I don't want to give you like crazy numbers, but something like starting like the lowest starting around 40,000 Canadian dollars a year, and then that can go up depending on how good of a junior you are or what studio you're working at. And then and then on a yearly basis you can negotiate to have that salary go up. But studios have not been great these days to be competitive and to kind of like stay up to date with inflation rates and all that stuff. Kind of like this high cheekbone look that I was getting before. Okay, let's see. What percentage of AI? I don't know. That really depends on the studio. What percentage of AI will be included in the average concept artist workflow in the distant future? I can't predict the future. Nobody can predict the future. Until stuff is legally settled, where people know that they can own the copyright or the intellectual property created by AI. Like there's no like guarantee that studios will use it. Always struggle to translate traditional to digital, so I've been self-teaching myself. It's been hard. Yeah, it's hard, but it is doable. So just be patient, and I'm sure you'll find a way of translating your tools. Digital is a tool in itself, right? The different programs you use, the brushes you create, right? So it's kind of like traditional isn't all encompassing, right? You might be a good acrylic painter, but you might suck with oils, and you might suck at ballpoint pen drawing or with an ink brush. So you're learning a new tool one way or another. Often it can just be the interface that's a bit of a leap to work with, like going from drawing on a paper or something that has texture to drawing on a Cintiq or a tablet like an Intuos or an iPad, or they have you're working with a different kind of interface, and that can be a bit of a challenge, but it's a challenge you can overcome. I'm moving so slowly on this drawing. It's kind of it's kind of funny, but that's just the reality of streaming. Like here, jumping between stuff all the time. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. It's kind of a chill morning stream. Feel free to ask any kinds of questions about the process I'm using, and I'll do my best to answer. What hardware am I using? Cintiq 22 HD. It's an older model, I think. I don't know if they still create it. Hey, do you think working digitally exclusively on an iPad is realistic, or do you have to use Photoshop? You can absolutely do all your work on an iPad. As long as it's good work, people will hire you to do it. You can use any tool you want. It's much more about the final product than it is about the tool that you're using. When it comes to actually, like, you might run into issues that are standard with in the industry, like if you need to work on big files at high resolutions with lots of layers, then there's not a lot of programs on the iPad, for example, that can support, a 500 megabyte file or like a 1 gig or 2 gig file with like hundreds of layers. You'll be limited to canvas size, I think, in Procreate, or your iPad will just be steaming as it tries to run everything. But it's doable. I don't know what I'm doing with this silhouette here. I want to give it more of like a hard surface look, even though it's clothing. when I'm working with color, I always start by focusing on value and not the actual color, like not the hue, just the value. Because if my value is working, then I can kind of pick any color. But if it's not working, then no amount of hue variation and saturation, all that stuff is gonna help. It's gonna look muddy. So I can sort of work kind of monochromatic at the beginning and get my stuff worked out in terms of value, and then kind of refine all the hue variation and the actual like saturation and all that stuff a little later. What was your first art job, bro? Um, so in university, I was studying architecture, and I started posting my work online a lot more in like third and fourth year university. I got a little bit of traction on like Instagram and ArtStation, and my first contracts were art book covers, not art book covers, novel covers. Novel covers. I did a couple of those board game illustrations for like D&D expansion packs and that sort of thing. And then my first official job in a concept art studio was at Behavior Interactive. I worked on Dead by Daylight for 2 years. So I moved to Montreal for that, for my first job. And it was a pretty good experience. I mean, Behavior is really good for. It was a good experience for me. I learned a ton about like how video games are actually made, about the business, about the pipeline, the process, how to collaborate with other artists from different departments and stuff, and how to actually be useful in a studio. Not just a good illustrator, because I'd mostly done illustration work until then, and I didn't really know like what it meant to be a concept artist. come with all sorts of crazy colors. Can be kind of fun to start with like a rainbow palette and then kind of like dial it into to something that is more uniform. And I'm using this language like it's kind of fun, and you know, I like to do this, I like to do that, instead of you should do this and you should do that, or if this is the best way of doing it, because honestly it really, I love experimenting, and it often it's not the most efficient way of doing things, but it's a way that for me keeps the process playful, and you know, it offers me a sense of like escapism as I'm working on stuff. I don't focus too much on, like, there's a time and a place to be meticulous, and I just really enjoy, I really appreciate that sense of escapism that I can get from doing art more and more these days, because get older, you have more responsibilities. Everything is about, like, so much of what I do is now like related to the business, the art business, some way. And it can be nice just to take a little break from that, like a mental break, and just draw for fun. And that is when I create my best work. So both these arms are kind of telling a different story. I want to bring those together a little bit, so I'm going to add a little more purple on this side, and then knock back the saturation on this side a little bit. Figure out what I'm going to do here. I also like this process because I can kind of sculpt the silhouette once I have all the information in, and really refine those kind of secondary shapes. here I'm going to have kind of the reflection of the jacket. Does canvas have texture? No, all the texture is in the brush. Okay, what is your main source of inspiration? My previous paint strokes. So when I start, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Okay, so in this case, my source of inspiration is what someone said in the chat. They said cyberpunk witch or warlock. So I was drawing a female character, so I'm doing a cyberpunk witch. Then what actually informs the shapes and the design of the character, often I just start drawing. I fill the canvas with information, kind of like a sort of rough, cloudy sketch, right? And then once I have information on the canvas, then I can push and pull and mold my design to that. And those decisions are informed by years and years and years of practicing shape language and balancing detail and color theory and rendering and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what kind of informs or inspires my work. Okay, for what depends on changing your workflow, for example, start with black and white, direct from color. The more casually I'm working on something, the less I pay attention to workflow and more about just what I'm feeling like doing. For example, for this stream, right? I'm not doing this for a client. I'm just working on this for myself. So I can kind of I can just do something that I enjoy doing. And in this case, I just felt like painting from directly in color, so I'm doing that. The more important the job, like if I'm working on something in a studio or I'm doing a character design for a certain IP or something, then I'll pay more attention to workflow. And it really comes down to like, if other people depend on me down the line, like if I'm working in a studio and somebody's going to model my character, right? I might want to use a workflow that is that will lend itself better to that. This is going to take a little while to figure out. All this is covered. I don't want her bodysuit maybe to be made out of like this metal. Maybe she's a whole cyborg. This could also, prove to be disastrous, but but we're just rolling with it. Okay, here, this is gonna catch some light. Kind of just trying to work through this like a scanner, basically, from like top to bottom, run all the calculations in my brain. And I'm just focusing on creating cool shapes. I don't care too much if it makes sense or not. I can try and make sense of it at any point, but I just want there to be cool shapes. Often people will forgive you for cool shapes, even if it doesn't make sense. I mean, in a big way, that's what AI is so successful at doing, is just creating a whole bunch of big shapes that don't make any sense. So I would probably not take this approach if I was doing concept in a studio. But just for like a casual illustration, it's fine. I'm going to take all of this and shift it over. Maybe this part I can do like darker, almost like a black leather or something, and I think that'll contrast nicely with the maybe the boots I make metallic. I'm just going to look for like what are the downward facing planes, and then that's where my sort of metallic terminator is going to be. So that'll be that sort of underside there. And then I'll throw my blue, which is going to be where the skylight is reflecting. I'll throw that above. Kind of shift that hue around a bit. Again, just working from like a cloudy mess to something that makes sense. Very good. Okay, I'm shocked. Paint directly without dozens of layers. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not too attached to if I make a mistake. If I make a mistake, I just erase it and paint it again. Listen to music while you draw. Nope, I'm not listening to music right now. I'm just chilling with my thoughts. Sometimes I'll listen to music. If I'm designing something, I prefer not to listen to anything because my full concentration goes to my design work. In this case, it's kind of split between thinking about questions and how I'm going to answer them and what I'm actually drawing. But yeah, on a normal day-to-day, I just listen to music if I'm doing kind of monkey work. If I'm rendering, I can listen to music. If I'm yeah, basically almost that's one of the only times I'll actually listen to music actually. If I'm rendering something. Which in a way is the reason that I can stream like this and paint directly in color, is because I'm basically just rendering, and it can kind of be I wouldn't call it easy, but it's less like brain intensive than if I were like really going in depth into character design and doing something that has to check a bunch of different boxes. This just has to look like a cyberpunk character, and I don't know how many cyberpunk characters I've drawn, but it's in the a lot category. A little bit of blue. How am I going to transition from this to this? shadow shapes. Yeah, I want to make this a little more angular. Kind of stay within the theme. And here you can see, like, if I want to get rid of texture, I can just select the color that's in that area and just go over it. It kind of reduces the contrast of the texture. So I can kind of mold it, just get the right level of texture that I want in any given area. Add a little bit of bevel to these parts. A little bit of reflected light. So that this isn't such a harsh contrast. Why do your colors look different when you, I don't know what you mean by that. They should, the colors that I have on the color wheel are the same as the ones I'm painting. I'm just switching colors a lot, so maybe it's hard to track. Chris, when you transferred your brushes to the clip, this magnificent thing you used to paint looked a little strange. What can I do to leave it as it is in Photoshop? Sorry, I have no idea what that means. If you transfer the brushes to Clip Studio, they might act a little weird. The ones that I am using, I've gone in and tweaked them in Clip Studio so that they work well for me in Clip Studio. Again, it's like, it's a different tool. You need to modify stuff. And it just takes a little bit of research to look into how to use the brush engine. And you, I mean, it's just, you know, going into Window, Subtool Detail, and then playing with like all these settings and, you know, switch, move sliders, check boxes, just experiment with all that. And you'll eventually, you'll learn how to use the brush engine tool, and you'll be able to make any brush you want. But also you'll be able to fine tune the tools that you have so that they work best for you. Yeah. So what was it? Somebody said, oh yeah, about the colors. Yeah, if the colors that I apply are, so let's say I'm painting this, right? And I add it here, right? There's opacity, right? So if I paint really hard, then I'll get the color that I have in the color picker, but I have opacity on my brush, so. Okay, so I'm gonna make a change here. I'm going to select all this stuff. I think I want to make it more purple. So magenta, bring that in. Go to highlights. Yeah. Let's go with that. Kind of matches the face a little better. I'm also going to liquefy some stuff and exaggerate the proportions. extend the arm a little. Push this out. And just try to find basically some interesting shapes. Maybe shift the shape of the head a little bit. Go just slightly warmer, maybe. The underside of this. Maybe throw in a little bit of atmospheric perspective, like knock it back. I'm just gonna block in like these big shapes with some quick lasso selections. Top parts are going to kind of be hitting some light. So here. Let's go. I like that, what that one looks like. don't know if this makes any sense, but that's okay. I want it to be kind of eclectic. Watch multiple video. I watched his video multiple times when he's using Photoshop, putting texture on the canvas he's painting or factor to achieve that texture. So Arthur Morgan, my texture is in my brush. Wait, this is all on single layer? Yes, sir. Wish I could someday reach that level of skill. You absolutely can. It just takes time. Little time, little practice. Little time is in several years, but you know, it is a one day at a time. You get pretty good in a couple years. Just a couple years of solid practice, and you can be like industry standard. Do I prefer exploring designs or finalizing them? I like polishing designs for sure. I really like rendering. I'm not one of those people who dislikes rendering. Like I like the process of polishing and making materials feel real. Exploring designs is fun though, in its own, it has its own right. So I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth between the chat and this drawing, and that's obviously because I actually want to make a drawing and not just kind of linger on a live stream and not actually do anything. So I can only look one place at a time, I should say. I don't really have like a moderator with me or anything like that, so please be friendly. Here, let's go there. Gonna fix. I like these kind of inset joints details. I find them kind of fun. And bring some more cyberpunky aesthetics. Bring in that symmetry, kind of make that work on both sides. And then when I'm happy with where the shapes are going, I can kind of close the silhouette and start refining the design. So I'm kind of doing my line art up like after I do a lot of the shading. It's kind of upside down, but I find it works for me. a fun way of getting like exploring shapes without defining a boundary so early. Like sometimes I do line art and then I feel like I'm stuck with my line art and I can't, like, I spent all that time doing line art, so I don't want to, like, you know, move away, try something else. When I start by the form, I find I'm a little less attached. I can make more changes, and yeah, it's a little bit more flexible. Play with stuff, play with like colors and forms and little details like that I would never think of when if I was doing just line art. This is a little bit inset. And something I really like to do is kind of go around the border of things with like a saturated color and almost like give the line art a bit of a tinting so that it's not so just desaturated and black. Okay, I'm just gonna clean this up. Take another look at the chat. Let me tell you guys what's up. Okay. Okay, we're kind of getting somewhere with this character. Okay, let's see. Bit of random, but why did you switch to Clip Studio? Photoshop was driving me crazy, so that's why. It kept changing my preferences and deleting my like save files. You know when you open Photoshop and you see the recent documents, so it kept deleting those. So every time I opened Photoshop, I couldn't see what my latest stuff was, and that started driving me crazy. And yeah, it crashed all the time. It was unstable, and yeah, every time every 2 days or 3 days, I'd have to reset all my keyboard shortcuts and all that stuff. It even deleted all my brushes once, which really pissed me off because I had to dig back in my old stuff and find brushes again. What kind of power that witch has? I'm gonna say she shoots nuclear blasts from her hands. Actually, see what happens when this might be disastrous if I add a background to her. This is gonna look really ugly because I was painting on one layer and obviously there's transparency, so this is when adding a background, it's going to show through everything and be really, really not nice. Also, this is super laggy. Like, I know I'm using a big brush. That's one thing that's kind of not super great about Clip Studio. Maybe I just haven't figured it out yet, but it seems like the brushes start to lag pretty significantly when you get to a certain size. So this is fine here. I just want to bring back the brightness of those metals. Oh no, wait. I wanted to erase all this stuff. There you go. That contrast to come through. So I haven't worked on the hand yet, really, so that's kind of not great. And then in areas like this, I can kind of fade it out towards the edge to still get some contrast with the background. This stuff I want to bring back up. Okay, what am I going to do here? What did I want to do? I think I wanted to do like a... So that's going to be the back of her hand. maybe something like that. I'll come back to this later. I'm not a big fan of backgrounds. If Magic the Gathering went cyberpunk, yeah, pretty much. What do you think of Procreate? What do I think of Procreate? Maybe used for professional matters, for example, for game design. Procreate's a great tool to draw. Its layers and stuff are pretty limiting. Like your file size is pretty limited. So if you're often in a studio, you'll be iterating on designs and using a lot of layers to iterate on the same design instead of separating stuff into files. So I find that it's pretty limiting in that sense. Like you can't really, very limited in the size of the design that you have. But I've seen people use Procreate in a professional context to various degrees of success. And yeah, it's all good. I mean, it really depends on the project. It's not like it's not a terrible thing. It's legal, so that's good. So here I'm using a soft brush to make bigger corrections instead of using a round brush. I kind of want the forms here to read a bit better. Have this come out. And this is just like the reality of working directly in color, is that you still need to fix mistakes and stuff. You can just kind of work a little bit faster because you're just, you're fixing the actual painting. It's actually a pretty nice brush to use. I'm not really attached to any tools that I'm using, as long as it does the job. Like, I don't treat anything like it's too special. I'm not a big fan of these, of the shape of these. I don't like how parallel they are. I like when stuff tapers. And when stuff overlaps and, you know, intermingles. She's supposed to be witchy, so I want to add like some more like aggressive shapes. Almost like hair. That would kind of breaks the silhouette. All about the shape design. And then obviously she needs witch stilettos. I was gonna say I love drawing reflective stuff because you can really play with different shapes, and it's a kind of fun illusion to create. place really dark values versus really light values. Kind of gives that chrome effect. You got to be kind of bold with it though. You can't kind of go just half. Here, I think I want to flashier highlight. You can also go pretty saturated in some of the highlights in like the bounce light. Kind of bring in some different shapes. I'm just like ignoring the hands just altogether. Hey, sorry for the question. Why I say sorry for the question? Don't be sorry. What tablet do I use? I use a Cintiq 22 HD. It's a bit of an older model, but I like it. It's not. It's a nice size. I find 22 inches as a display is a nice size to work on. Once you get into like the 24-inch Pro and the larger models, you kind of need to reach around it. And even as a tall guy with long arms, like I find those bigger Cintiqs can kind of mess up my shoulders after working on them for a while, because I'm constantly reaching around for my mouse and my keyboard and stuff. How to add texture to your art? Mine looks so blurry. So that's a good question. Where to add texture? So I think that you got to be careful with adding texture and how you use texture, because it can really there's a point where texture becomes noisy, I guess, like, and you want to avoid bringing unnecessary attention to the textures that you use. So I'd say focus your texture around the Terminator and the specular highlight. So let's give a little example here. I want to use the marquee. So let's say you have a sphere, right? You have a little bit of reflected light. You have a little bit of a specular highlight, right? So if this is your form, right? And here there's no texture, right? We're just using like a soft brush, just modeling the form. If we want to add texture to this, right? You can use different brushes and stuff, but you basically want to focus your texture around the specular highlight. So here I'm adding a little bit of texture there. You can kind of see kind of working back and forth. But adding just a little bit of texture focus there will give your surface, already it looks like the surface is textured. And then if you kind of add a little bit of texture around the terminator, right, that can also help with the illusion, because that's where the form is turning away from the light and where some of the bumps and stuff will catch. So here you can see just by adding a little bit of texture here, specular highlight and around the terminator, this looks like a textured ball now instead of being a really soft one. For overall though, there's different kind of texture, like there's surface texture, and then there's also just a sort of like the texture, the kind of texture of your paint, right? So if I have, like, let's say I wanted to make this ball red, I could use like different shades of red here. Maybe I should use like a blend mode or something, like hard light, so that I don't change my values too much. You can see like I'm adding lots of different colors in here, and I'm using a texture brush, but this is just to colorize my sphere. And you can see that there's a lot of texture, and the texture can be distracting from the actual form, so you need to be careful with that if you're kind of working that way, right? If I bring this to a little bit of a more neutral, like less textured brush, you can see it's a little less distracting. And then again, I can bring more texture to the specular highlight. I can shift colors like this, and I get like a nice little some interplay between color and value. And I can also bring a little bit more texture to the terminator, right? So I kind of have both, right? In color and in value. I'm just kind of emphasizing it in both. A little texture tutorial. Proco said texture lives in the midtones. I don't agree. I'd have to double check, but I think texture really lives in the specular highlight and in the like the halftone leading into the terminator. All blend modes are made equal. They're all the best in their own way. Depends what you want to do, what kind of information you want to preserve. Hard light is good at giving you some nice interplay of color. And if you want to make changes to your value, right, it gives you the flexibility of making changes because it can overwrite any information you have on layers underneath. Example, like overlay won't, you can't completely overwrite layers that are underneath, right? If I'm on hard light here and I take white, I can basically erase out the layer that's underneath. But if I kind of bring that down, right, you can see that it's coming back. Where if I put it on like overlay, right, it blasts out the highlights of everything, but it doesn't overwrite it. That's the way I kind of think about it. I should probably work on these hands, eh? Also, for anybody interested, I'm just going to mention this again. You can see in the little banner on the bottom that my masterclass is open for registration. I'm doing a winter session. It's 12 weeks. It's online. I teach everything you need to know to become a character concept artist or an illustrator. We do basically like a week, 4 weeks of fundamentals. We do 4 weeks of anatomy, right? And then we do 4 weeks of character design theory and practice. So like we talk a lot about workflow and about production schedule and then actually, you know, the whole character design process and stuff. So if that's something you're interested in maybe looking into, you can go to the website christophyoung.com and you can read up more about it. There's the syllabus and everything there. The semester so far is going really well. I have some great students. I'm soon going to put up a student gallery because this is the first semester that I'm doing this. So obviously the students are still working on their exercises and projects and stuff. But I'll soon have a gallery up where you can see some of the student work. And yeah, so check that out if you're interested in that sort of thing. I've been putting this sort of course together for years, and there's some really valuable content in there. We also have like weekly mentorship, like weekly one-on-one time. We do half-hour meetings every week. I look over the students' work, give them criticism, paint overs. We talk about, you know, career aspirations, all that sort of stuff. Prep them to apply for jobs and help them find jobs wherever they are in their whatever stage they're in their career. I think I need to make this a little bit shorter. Something weird about this hand. I think it's the pinky's too far. Maybe. Hands are tricky. They don't get much easier, even with a lot of practice. Warmer bounce light under here. We find the sweet spot for a daily amount of practice. As much as you can get in without hurting your hand or your brain. So as soon as it physically hurts, it's like working out, right? You don't want to overexert yourself. But if you're in shape, right, you can run 20 kilometers a day. If you're not, you can only run 1 kilometer a day or 2 kilometers a day. Once you're in the industry, you're going to be drawing for 8 hours a day, which is, you know, tons of practice. It's tons of drawing. So leading up to that, if you're having a hard time practicing for an hour a day, then you're definitely not ready, right? So you got to work up to to being able to sustain, you know, 4, 5, 6 hours of practice a day. Because that's what you are going to be doing if you're planning on doing it professionally. And, you know, even anticipating that, it can still be a jump when you get your first job. When I got my first job at Behavior on Dead by Daylight, moved to Montreal, you know, I went from practicing maybe 5 or 6 hours a day to really, you know, drawing for 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours a day straight. You know, would just like break for lunch, afternoon coffee, whatever. But it is a big jump, right? I kind of want to give this character like a crazy Iron Man kind of power source. Same color as their eyes. Yep, I'm not using any blend mode. I'm just painting in the shinies. And it's gonna look like it shines because that's how it works. We're gonna decay that light source. It's gonna shift towards orange. It's gonna shift towards red. In the middle, it's gonna be real bright. Want it to be like a sort of hex, like witch, right? It's supposed to be. Here we're going to have 1, 2, 3 longest finger, and then 4. We'll have the index here. Silhouette. Reinforce the Terminator, or at least the sort of metallic reflection kind of point. Reflections. You can also bring in some reflections on the character, right? Want it to look like this is emitting light. Okay. We'll break here. Is there anything you don't like drawing, struggle to draw? Tons. Not a big connoisseur of airplanes and vehicles in general. Not a big environment guy. Like I can kind of hold my own, but in terms of value composition, all that stuff, I've got a lot of ways to go. Architecture, right? Not something I'm super strong in, even though I studied architecture. Haven't done lots of concepts, so I can struggle quite a bit with that. Almost anything that isn't in my portfolio. Second is kind of muddy. So I'm gonna drop back in value, I think. I don't need it to pop out so much. Same with this. I think I'll keep this all kind of like more matte. Like matte rubber. I think I'll do that under here too, just all of this. Get some better like value contrast. Sorry, I know I answer like one question and I go straight back to drawing, but that's what I'm here to do. Okay, let's do another question here. Like a simple way to, what would you advise is like a simple way of approaching designing mechanical body parts like you have in this drawing? It's something I'm very interested in building. So the first thing, if you're drawing mechanical things on a human, the first thing that's really important to learn is anatomy. It's not how to draw the mechanical thing. It's about understanding the underlying mechanics of the human body so that it looks believable. If you ignore anatomy when doing mechanical stuff, like all these things are just, I'm just drawing the lines of the anatomy. Like this panel here, those are the flexors, you know, this is the bicep. Underneath you have the tricep, you know, there's the flexors again. Here you have the overlap of the deltoid and the armpit and the lats and stuff. So I'm just outlining the anatomy. I'm not really I'm not designing like a robot, right? So that's the most important thing when you're doing character anatomy. Is the simple way of thinking about it is just outline the anatomy, but that's easier said than done because anatomy is complex in its own way. And like all subjects, it's a bit of a trap to think that there's a simple way, that there's always a simple way of thinking about stuff. Some subjects are just complicated, like anatomy. You can learn some simplified shapes of anatomy, but it's only going to get you like maybe 50% there. The other 50% is just hard. It's hard science, and it's, you know, it takes time to learn. Doesn't mean it's not fun or it's not super rewarding. It's just a little harder, and there's nothing wrong about learning something that's difficult. In fact, that's why you get paid. You get paid to do the hard stuff, right? Kind of just obscuring all this stuff, but I do want to add maybe a little bit of detail under here. Some little mechanical pieces that catching some light. I'm going to soften some of these edges with a really saturated color. I'll kind of give it the look of like subsurface scattering. Can even do it like on the metal. Maybe I bring in some small panel lines. Bring a little more detail. And now we're kind of just in the detailing phase, so work this to the bone. Add some eyelashes. Maybe neutralize the color of the teeth. They look more like teeth. Maybe you can add some crazy colors to the hair. Make it feel more cyberpunky. We can add little lights and stuff. That always makes cyberpunk stuff look cyberpunky. Little lights. Just find some spots where it could fit. Often I like to put them more like in recessed areas. clear. Yeah. We'll do a line. Can also, every time we add a light source, can make sure that it's catching elsewhere in the illustration, right? It's not always, the light source doesn't look like a light source unless it's casting light. And kind of play that up. Thoughts on changing the background color to an off-white tint, not to strain the eyes and during long working hours. During the daytime, it's not too bad. At nighttime, I'll often set my background to like 50% gray or something, and just, yeah. But I don't find it strains my eyes too much. Might be like just the brightness of your monitor that might be straining more than the fact that it's a white background. So you can also just turn down the brightness of your monitor. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I totally got caught up in this. Yeah, we are supposed to have a call. Yeah, I'm going to end this shortly, actually. So if you want to reschedule, we can do that. I'm really sorry. I totally got caught up in the stream. Okay. Let's see some last questions. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm gonna wrap this up because I have some other stuff to do, clearly. So yeah, it was nice talking to everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the process. Again, some last news. So I'm on Blue Sky now. If anybody wants to follow me on Blue Sky, I'm just checking it out. Yeah, and my registration for the winter mentorship masterclass session is open. If you want to check that out, I'm accepting 15 students next semester. So jump on it, and I'll talk to you guys later. It was really fun hanging out. I'll see you guys. Ciao, ciao.